Great. Thanks everyone for joining, and Jules and Jeroen and Shazad. Thank you guys. This really all stems from Shazad, you sending me this video you made on your phone about, hey, like I made Salesforce work with Founda, and I thought you'd want to check it out. And I posted that up, and it may have been one of the most successful video posts I've ever posted. There was somewhere around 1,000, 1,100 minutes of viewing time. So
No.
so because of that, I thought that it would be worth hopping on a call with you and Jeroen, and really just maybe talking through how you guys even got into this. Obviously, you and I connected from the past, so there's that. But really, the interest in Salesforce Health Cloud interoperability, sort of that world, and really why you guys think this is important. So we could kick it off with maybe a little introductions, your guys' thought on that, and just try to keep it to maybe an open dialogue here where we can kind of converse back and forth and share with the audience, what we're doing and why we're doing it, and really why it's interesting. So maybe Shazad, we could kick off with you.
Yeah, sure. So thank you everyone for joining. Thank you for the opportunity and the partnership. This is one of those things that you don't have to think that you're waking up to go to work for, right? It's a very organic, just kind of motivating piece of technologies that I've seen in a while. And so, yeah, I mean, how I came to what I did with Founda, for instance, is just there's some history just to kind of give you guys, especially the audience, just a little bit of a background. So we do a lot of Salesforce consulting, right? So my practice, I run the entire Salesforce practice, and always do is Salesforce for health and life science businesses. And so that entails providers, in the provider space, pretty much anything, hospital systems, surgery centers, all kinds of therapies, so OT, speech, behavior, mental health, recovery centers, medical technology companies, we do pharma companies, specialty pharmacies, med spas. So kind of a long range, pairs, of what we're doing with healthcare in general. And, the challenge of data is something that is we're very familiar with, because we've come across that over the years in many ways and shapes and forms. And so when I was at UiPath, for instance, and I had my former Salesforce customers reach out to me for looking at some sort of integration platforms, we kind of started on the small and medium-sized business, right on the SMB side of the business, coming up with an RPA-based solution. And then, of course, Founda is kind of like the grand version of the same concept, which is kind of higher volume, quick to market, quick to deploy, costs a lot less than what's out there in the market. So as soon as I looked at what the platform's capability was, my eyes kind of lit, and I was like, yeah, this is something that I want to do. And so, yeah, I mean, literally for our first kind of instance, we took a week and we got epic data coming into the system. Shul actually has a demo we'll get to at the end, but it was just really easy to use. I think Founda understands what the problems are in healthcare data and interoperability in general. So that's what I'm most excited about, is what it does for our business at Accelerate, in particular the Salesforce practice. We run into a lot of roadblocks when it comes to selling Salesforce in healthcare and life sciences when it comes to pulling this data, patient data, clinical data, scheduling data out of EHR, EMRs and into Salesforce. And because we were running into a lot of those issues, this being able to solve for data coming back into the system, that really, I think, is what kickstarted the solution itself, because now I'm able to, our team is actually able to deploy, sell, and create solutions that otherwise are just not possible, right? Like what's out there in the market, it's just cost prohibitive. Like just to kind of throw some last numbers, and then I'll turn it over to you, Jeroen. Let's say, especially like between like growth business and mid-market, let's say someone's going to spend, $50K to $100K on Health Cloud. The kind of numbers that you're looking at for the existing, competitors, maybe we'll name them after, but, it's 5x or to 10x that price point. And so it just leaves Salesforce out of the equation in terms of being able to sell and leverage and use the platform. And so what this solution allows you to do is it makes it affordable for those customers, right? They can get in and we can kind of start working with Health Cloud right away.
Yeah, yeah, I was gonna say, hop in the middle here. So it was super interesting, man. I've talked for hours around automation and RPA, and I think after you've done it for a certain period of time, you start to realize that it's really all about data flow. It's really it's as much about data flow as it is about the navigational sequence that you're trying to emulate, say, in RPA. And I think some of those things that I was able to discover working with you on this one was, you can actually drive data into a trigger point in an application like Salesforce Health Cloud that kicks off those workflows. And so to me, it really was that next level of automation that I was looking for when I met Jeroen. And Jeroen, I know you and I have also spent hours, in the out of the box tank. But one thing that really was impressive to me when we first met was, why you're here, and your background in fintech and really what you've done. Take that modern tech and approach to moving dollar signs and apply it to moving PHI. So maybe you could fill us in on that a little bit.
Oh, sure. Thanks. I didn't really realize until we got into healthcare how spoiled I was. Like you mentioned, right? I was working in fintech. So for context, I built global payment infrastructure for massive corporates. Think, Nike, McDonald's, Subway, those kinds of folks. And where now looking back really on it, it's kind of magical what you're doing there. You've got, you're on the other side of the planet with your phone or like a card, buying something in a convenience store in Hong Kong. And within seconds, there's highly secure, in a highly secure way, like your data is communicated to a small credit union on the other side of the planet. And there's an exchange of information between those two companies that have before this never met each other, signed an agreement together, or even know that each other exists. And that was kind of the world. Like for me, that was kind of table stakes. Like that's the way the world's supposed to work in terms of technology and moving data around, even in highly regulated industries. And even later on top of that, to kind of allude to what you're saying, Shazad, like if you right now go online and you want to start a new web shop or even a physical store and want to start accepting payments, that's the process of minutes to maybe a day or two, kind of depending on the complexity. And that for me was the norm. That was the baseline. Like that's the stuff we were used to building. And then we were just around the same time as we were starting Founda, we met with some executives from healthcare. And well, we realized that, wait a minute, what we were doing that isn't normal. Like they were telling us about, they had spent, there was one hospital in particular I remember, they'd spent a year and a half and invested millions of dollars into trying and integrate a new piece of software. They already bought and paid for it, but it was all manual work until that point. Like it was, and when they told me just about what they're trying to do, it's like, it's that hard to move some of that PHI and some of the patient data while we can move massive amounts of money and transaction data in minutes and days. So it just kind of like, it frankly pissed me off. It really just pissed me off. So we said like, okay, you know what? Healthcare isn't going to be exactly the same, but there's too much overlap here that it has to be that different. So we applied really what we learned there and started building out Founda, really with this philosophy of building an infrastructure that allows different systems to securely collaborate without having to know too much of each other. That's really I think what we're trying to accomplish here, to make it as easy as accepting payments is online these days, of dealing and integrating with any kind of healthcare software.
Yeah, that's amazing. That it's been really available. This is modern approach to a platform that securely moves data in a complex environment. Like you and I have discovered together, like even the penetration into the applications here in healthcare that kicks off automations and things like that. Is really it's like the frontier almost, because nobody's quite taking the same approach that appears that Founda has here with a platform that's really left to partners like Shazad and providers to be able to really manage the exchange of data flow between each other, which is a pretty amazing thing as well. Shazad,
Yeah,
I know you and
yeah.
I was going to say,
Well, I
you
was
and I
just
have
gonna,
talked about this.
well, I was just gonna comment, that in terms of like the tech stack, just like your own said, right? We've had databases for a long time. We've had management systems for a long time. We've had enterprise message buses and queue management, right? And like all these phenomenal ETL tools before that. And there's a plethora of technology out there to move data around. And I think there are a couple of things that make healthcare data exchange a little more complicated than everybody else, right? Compliance is one big reason, right? HIPAA kind of comes in and for the right reasons in terms of protecting the patient's privacy perspective. But some things have just lagged behind way more than they should have, right? There hasn't been historically a lot of incentives, let's say, for the providers and large hospital systems to adopt and kind of take on newer technology. And I think for some of those, like compliance, the expense of making those changes. Also, if you look at the healthcare system, especially in the hospital side, there's been a lot of acquisitions and mergers over the last 5 to 10 years. And so on average right now, when we work with like a medium to large size hospital system, they have 15, 16, EHRs. And so if you go back to what Yaron was saying, if it's going to cost you, let's say on average, $1 million to integrate one EHR for like, just let's say patient demographics, right? Just the kind of key use case that we're going to talk. Let's talk about the first use case. What do you need? I want to know who the patient is. I want to know where they came from. Who was the referring doctor? What's their diagnosis? What do we need to do with them, right? It's some basic stuff, right? Just to do that, if you're spending in 7 figures, it's just a lot of money. And if I'm told as a business owner, hey, listen, fax complies with HIPAA laws, guess what I'm using just to give you my patient? I'm sending you a fax, right? So, from their perspective, they say, God bless HIPAA, for fax will live on forever. We'll keep doing it forever. So there just isn't that push for them to go that direction. And I think one of the things that you guys are pioneering is helping them get on, right? So with the pandemic also, the fact that things had to become digital, number one, and so the cost and the time to deploy, right? This is now an option. It's just, quite frankly, like 5 years ago, there was just no inspiration, motivation, or intent, right? Or reason for these folks to move over. And now we've answered those questions.
Well, with all these amazing digital health solutions that are out there, wearables, all of that kind of stuff, now there's also, healthcare from your home care, whatever, all that stuff. There's a lot of other compelling reasons, and I think if it was cost effective or affordable to do integration, then there's no reason not to, because I'm convinced that healthcare will be a better place. Being in this role, man, I've seen some of the most amazing digital health solutions you'd ever want to see that should be available to people. They're there. They just can't get connected to the data for one reason or another. And, you're just on that note, I know you really had scale in mind, and that's really, why you and your organization is able to produce a cost-effective solution. But Founda stood for a foundation to scale. Maybe you could just elaborate on a little bit, more about what that means, because that, I believe, is what drove the cost down.
Yeah. So really, one of the things one of the, I think, major strategic lessons that we took from the fintech sector was that sector, banking, finance, has really old bones as well. I was like, if you put the history of payments technology and the history of healthcare interoperability technology next to each other, like you see, especially the early years, you see a lot of lines that are similar, and then suddenly payments accelerates out, taking this exponential curve in maturity and growth, where it's more linear with healthcare. And what we saw in payments was, because you're building on these old bones, sometimes what you have to do is, in order to get speed, in order to really cut down costs, is not to keep building on older and older and older technology, but to really go down to the core, go down really to the lowest possible system that you can touch, and then build straight on that. Because we see a lot of our customers that started with, let's say, kind of buying a existing ESB, as you referred to, Shazad, or a service bus or a broker system, which gets the job done. But then if you want to do something new or you want to build on that, you're always going to be dependent on another organization for your speed of innovation. And they've been around for decades. Like, their speed of innovation is slower because they've also built on older and older things. So we bring this philosophy of building from the foundation up, so that you have young bones that you can, so that it's a slightly slower start. It takes you a couple of beats longer to get up to speed. But once you're up to speed, you're unstoppable, because your speed of innovation is only limited by your own ability to take new ideas and change and apply them to your technology and apply them to your solution. And that's really the way we view this, because even in our time, like everybody here, we've seen healthcare change. We've seen healthcare change from the interoperability perspective, and people trying to do new things all the time and making small improvements here and there. You need to keep building on top of that and be able to, jump to the next generation, not be stuck with just, the old HL7 stuff, but be able to do newer things, comply with new regulation. But if you want to do that at scale and at speed, you need to control it all the way to the foundation of your platform. So it's a very, almost philosophical point for us there to maintain that speed and that importance.
So let me just quickly vouch for that paradigm shift, because it is a paradigm shift, right?
Yes.
When we have tried to do what we did with you guys in a week previously, I mean, we would be looking at a 4 to 6 month project, right? And not to steal your thunder, because I think I would want you to talk about the whole app exchange idea, right? But the way you're making Founda accessible within the Salesforce environment, the platform, the ecosystem, it's unheard of, right? The ease with which we're able to connect, bring in, and kind of start working with what the core of Salesforce is just, it is a paradigm shift. The ROI is a lot, it's easy to show, and it shows a lot quicker, right? So for example, the fact that even the thought that I can just take connection parameters to an EMR and just say, type in this, right? So I'm not a developer, right? The fact that you have a pre-built connector into an EMR and I'm just configuring stuff, I mean, it's mind-blowing, right? Maybe it's not mind-blowing to somebody that is not familiar with healthcare, but within our space, the fact that I can just do that, it's mind-blowing, right? And so I think that's that paradigm shift that I see, and I wanted to vouch for, because we've actually done and deployed and seen it in action. And I'll show some use cases later on. But I think that's what I'm trying to communicate to most of my Salesforce customers that previously were saying, oh, we're going to keep Salesforce over there for these use cases since we can't get, patient data or clinical data or whatnot. And we're going to keep our, kind of clinical stuff over here, and then kind of still disjointed, right? And that impacts patient outcomes. It impacts provider outcomes. And what this integration allows you to do, right, with the cost that's associated with it, is it drives that better patient, better provider outcome at a price point that doesn't exist today.
Yeah, I'd like to stick on that for a minute, if you don't mind. Like, Salesforce has always, even just Salesforce for regular salespeople, has always been one of those, one of those applications where it's as good as the data that's in it, and if you don't have good users populating it, that's yes, one contributor. But there's also integrations and stuff that, if more of all the data it really needs to be effective was in there, more people would probably use and adopt the application. So my question to you around what you just said is, you were talking about sort of being segregated in departments, and so is this integration of data, this population of data, if you will, in Salesforce, make it a more effective solution, a more across the board solution? Like, how does it pull those together?
Sure. Yeah. I'll just give you one simple example, right? Yeah. That covers that. So think about a typical, like a hospital system. The front office staff gets referrals, right? The referral may be, I need lab work done. It may be I need to see a specialist, or I need a medical record, right? Like the requests are varied, right? And typically that staff works in one system and the actual clinical staff is working in another system, right? And there's manual input that's required to get it from this state to that state. A lot of times this state is a fax. So forget about even having a system. It's literally a sheet of paper that the front office staff is typing in, right? And so this process is disjointed, right? It takes a lot of time. With the volume of patients that we had to see with COVID, for instance, we had some of the highest turnover, right, in those couple of years because staff was burnt out. Now imagine this new referral coming in, some verification of benefits process automatically happening.
Yeah.
And if the process, if this practice was going to take a patient, the patient automatically being created. And the first thing that a human being has to do is actually call, which of course a machine can't do, or maybe they will.
I mean, we still want to live here, right? Like,
Right.
Up to machines.
So, but think about the efficiency and the motivation, right, that the staff has, because the staff, one of the things that I used to hear from staff all the time is, why do I have to? I think it was listed as like 35 to 40% of the folks in that category said, this is the reason why we quit our job, is the manual work that we have to do. And so that's what this process is eliminating, right? You have nurses, you have doctors, they don't want to spend half of their day typing stuff, right? Only the essentials. And so that's what and then this last point on that, Kirk, is when you talk about the power of Salesforce, like that's what you were saying, right? So
yeah.
Imagine, so it's once the patient demographics are set up, even little things like, let's say this was a physical therapy clinic and the therapist saw the patient and they had seen 10 of the 12 visits that they were approved for the insurance. And all they got to do is write a note that says, this person needs another 6 sessions or 12 sessions, right? Because that clinical note is automatically now coming back into Salesforce, nobody has to get involved. You can take that, you can trigger off an automatic renewal for another prescription, right? Like it's just, the call is going to get, you create a task for the nurse to call them and, so the time that these professionals are now spending is actually delivering care, not manual, labor.
Yeah, it's interesting. Like I called what you just described when I was, around last year when I was looking for, I was just ready to find, I knew there was a next frontier. There has to be a next level. It's technology. There's always something. It's just who's ready to go out and start looking for it first. That's when I ran into Jeroen, and started thinking about like what you just described, this manual thing. And I love RPA. I'm still an absolute proponent of UiPath. I had a great time working there, but for me personally in my career, I wanted to, see what that next level was. And what you described, mark my words, is that next level of evolution, because you're almost building automations to use a data mover like Founda to sort of penetrate deep enough into the application that it triggers those automations. So I don't have to use OCR to read a fax, to then copy, then paste, then emulate this click, click, click. RPA absolutely still has, there's still a place for it, but it's further in the application than you might have thought. And in many of these cases, like the example we're going to show here today, you can just straight move the data from application to application. And because that was cost prohibitive in the past, that's why nobody's really even thought about it like this. You get into this world and, you kind of lose your mind a little bit about, wow, like I'm really just, kind of mapping data and trying to target where I want it to land versus how is somebody going to open this application, click this tab, fax it, whatever, like all that madness, now if we're smart and we control and flow data like that versus, in the past, it's just been prohibitive, like, one integration at a time over, hundreds of applications. No wonder nobody wants to think about it.
Yeah, a quick comment on that is just, literally, I can tell you in a Salesforce sales context or opportunity context, we couldn't even approach deals because they were cost and time prohibitive. This enables a whole set, like dozens and dozens and dozens of businesses that previously just could not build a single, customer 360 or patient 360. Like, just, it changes the way you can deliver care.
I love it, man, and I'm super excited about the things we can do. And let's hop in. Let's talk a little bit about the video that you made, and
Oh,
maybe we can throw down a few use cases. I
sure.
know we brought Jules from Founda to kind of just give a little quick demo, and then hop into some questions here if
Sure.
we've got any at the end.
Sure. Yeah. So I mean, so the idea of the video was just, the moment I saw Founda, I think in my head at least, it was already working. But for the world, I can't show them my head, right? Like, it's like what's happening in Shazad's head is not what I can demo to folks. So I had to put it on like an actual system to make it work. And so that's why I made the request that I made of you guys to kind of just work with me. And so I was very pleased with the speed with which we were able to create that environment. And so I'll let we can set up the demo, but let me just quickly show. I'll bring up this quick use case document where I can talk about where some of the most common use cases are for us, right? And so here, I'm assuming everyone can see my screen. Yeah. So like this is a mental health care company. They use Athena Health, and so I think one of the things you guys talk about is it doesn't really matter what the EMR on the other side is, right? It's agnostic to that. Once you've done one, the connectors are built, and that last mile kind of customizations we can do as Founda partners. Accelerate can do that. But this is kind of the core use case for a lot of providers, right? Which is automatically from Health Cloud, you want to create the patient in the EHR without a human being being involved, right? That cuts that time into half right away. Sometimes, so where RPA comes in, Kirk, right? So if there's like a VOB process, for instance, we might throw in if the APIs in particular are not available, like if some payers need us to log into our website and do, some sort of manual work, that's where that stuff comes in. But once you're ready for the intake of the patient, that's what Founda is doing. It's kind of creating the patient. It's coming back and saying, hey, this patient, this referring provider, this diagnosis code, right, with this payer, like this is the core referral is now set up. So Health Cloud has a out of the box kind of referral management functionality.
Perfect.
So,
like what we were talking about earlier, right? Like, taking data and driving a workflow. Is that, I'm not a Salesforce expert like you, but that's what we were talking about earlier, right?
That's right. So, I mean, if you want to think about it as a business, this is really leads management, right? So from lead to actually a paying customer, right? So a new patient comes in and we're kind of confirming we're going to take the patient.
Thanks for dumbing that down for me, by the way. Really
Well, it's not just for you, right? I talk to practice owners all the time, and that's how they look at it, right? They're looking at, okay, yes, I have to deliver healthcare, but I also have to run a business. And so what does it mean in terms of the business? And so we're automatically creating patients. And then to really leverage the strength of Salesforce, like the power is in actually delivering some of that care, delivering some of that kind of, state-of-the-art CRM stuff that Salesforce is known for, right? So if I can bring back appointments, I can do all my reminders using digital engagement. I can send out text messages from Salesforce, right? So most EMRs are just catching up to modern technology, right? They were not built to do this fun, state-of-the-art, real digital engagement stuff. They were just not. They were very transactional in nature. Like I saw a patient, this is what the heart rate was. Here's what the sugar level. Like it's just very transactional in nature. And so,
sorry to interrupt, but you were mentioning this in the fintech area. This legacy old apps that were just built. When they were built. It doesn't have to be eons ago, but we've just technology has advanced a little bit. So just drawing the parallel a little bit here from the fintech experience.
Yeah, and I think it's important to note that the purpose of Health Cloud is not to replace your EHR, right? That will stay as the clinical system. We're trying to bring what the white glove type of customer experience that folks now expect, but also in healthcare, right? It shouldn't just be with your Amazon cart and like your Apple store. You should be able to deliver care with the same tech that's available now. And I think that's what Founda is enabling here, right? Is that white glove customer experience or patient experience. And so, again, appointments is one thing, clinical data, like I was saying before, right? Like that physical therapist example that I gave you, there is intelligence and next steps, right? And just wisdom in what the clinician is writing in the EHR. And when we bring that into Salesforce, right now, whether it's Einstein reading through and making sense, or it's literally a code that means something else, or the number of visits that are running out, and we can make sense of that once it's been brought back from the EHR, right? And then we can drive automation from that within the Health Cloud platform. I'll quickly mention a couple of other use cases because they're fun, quite frankly. So this is a fun one because this is, again, like the speed to service a patient, right? And this particular use case, we were able to bring this down 3 to 4x in terms of getting back to the patient itself, right? So the old solution was somebody calls in. So this is a diabetes care management company. Most of the folks that call in are expectant moms, which have a higher tendency to be diabetic. And so it's important when they call in, they say, hey, should I take this medication or these type of foods? And so the nurse that was on the receiving end would first have to log into the first EMR, then the second, then the third, right? It's on average an 8 to 10 minute process while the patient's waiting. And now when somebody calls in, Salesforce knows the phone number that we're calling in with, and then we can spawn off 3 simultaneous transactions, get the most recent clinical note, the nurse looks at it. Typically, the average response time is now between 2 to 4 minutes. So depending on, what was needed, you're able to see 3 to 5 times more patients. So from a business perspective, right, you're able to now service more patients. The nurse and the clinical staff is happier because they're doing what they were hired to do, which is deliver care, not type stuff in and click and search and find information, right? So it sounds very clinical, or clerical rather, not clinical, right? And so this is sort of the enabling that we're talking about here.
Real quick on that one, just a quick question to you there. Is that enabled just because you were able to use a platform like Founda? Is it just moving data that frees up that time in that particular example?
I mean, that's the starting point, right? The starting point is without this kind of quickly deployed, API-based, integration solution, it's taking 10 minutes for me to respond to a patient, right? So from an ROI perspective, from a practice management perspective, or the business perspective, the first thing this thing is enabling me to do is seeing 3 times the patient or 5 times the patient, depending on what kind of day they're having. So that is now dollars that I can spend on figuring out where else do I need it, right? So I'm not sure where they're going to go with phase 2 with this, but you can only imagine the possibilities now that they're in the system and they're able to deliver that care quickly. Maybe we'll look at other notes, right? Maybe we'll look at when was the last time you were seen, right? We'll kind of look at deltas and whatnot. But I think, again, the key point that I want to drive here is this, without Founda, would have taken them maybe 8 months or so to do, maybe 12 months, right? And it would have cost at least 5 times the price of doing this.
Crazy. What else you got?
All right, quickly, and then we'll pass it over to Shul. So this is a really interesting use case. This is a business that kind of measures patient outcomes. And so the other large integration provider in this space had a very ridiculous pricing model. And this particular customer of ours, they needed to log into, providers' EHRs to grab the phone number so that they can send out these text messages to patients. And so, every time they have to go and connect in, bang, it's another, X gajillion dollars that they have to dish out. And so this is where I think the pricing model that you guys have in terms of volume-based transactions, discount for higher, volume transactions comes in, and it was very, very beneficial. And so the other thing is the speed with which you're deploying this, it actually is helping the customer to connect more and more providers with their own system, right? So they didn't even think this was possible in the time frame that it actually now is possible, because they had to restructure their entire costs, right? Because they were built on that model that was going to bring them here in this amount of time, but now they can actually go here, but also over here this time. I know I'm kind of doing the graph thing, but you get it, right? It's costing less, right? They're getting more customers, right? And they're doing it quicker than they thought they were. So it's really true enablement in terms of delivering care.
Man, I get so excited. I don't know if Jules loves or hates working with me because we could probably carry on just those use cases for a bunch longer. When you just start thinking about it. So, but what we'll do here, let's shift gears and go, Jules. Maybe you could show everyone what Shahzad done and how it looks, and a little bit about what it
Yep.
works, how it works, and then we'll we'll have some questions and wrap it up.
Yeah, definitely. So for the demo use case, we have actually been looking at the new referrals and new patients that are being created in Salesforce Health Cloud and making sure that those patients and referring provider information are automatically registered in the EHR as well. And for this demo, we are using OpenEMR as an EHR, but I just want to highlight that could be any EHR that we can integrate with. So for this use case, we've made sure that on one side, the accelerated Salesforce environment is integrated with the Founda platform, which is based on the Salesforce client profile, where Salesforce can set up all the different data elements that they need for this integration. So for the referral use case, it's about getting access to the patient demographics, getting access to the referring provider information. And then on the provider side, so in this case, the OpenEMR side, this same profile is also authorized by the provider. So that means that the provider is always in charge of what data is going through the Founda platform to what application. So what that looks like, I'm gonna share my screen and I will show you both the Salesforce side and the OpenEMR side.
And while you bring that up, Shul, I just wanted to kind of clarify, these are demo environments because clearly we cannot showcase actual customer environments in a demo kind of setup. But this replicates what Salesforce Health Cloud looks like from an object model perspective, and then what it would look like typically on an EMR side. Please go ahead, Shul.
And
Yes.
I thought you said, Shahzad, this is or Angela, that you guys did this in roughly a week from just
Yep.
a dead cold start, right? Like
Yep.
they even built the Salesforce components and everything, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a good point that you mentioned, Kirk, because the thing that I just mentioned about setting up these client profiles and authorizing as a provider, authorizing applications, that all goes into our Founda console, which is focused at self-service and transparency a lot. So that really ties into that as well. So what we'll see here is the accelerated Salesforce Health Cloud environment, and we'll jump to the referral step where in a minute I'm going to create a new referral. But before I do, I just want to show you the OpenEMR environment as well. And if I go to the list of patients, I'll just quickly show you that the patient I'm about to add is not in here yet. So I'm going to add a patient, create a referral for a patient called Margaret, which is currently not in the patient list in OpenEMR. So if I go into the Salesforce environment, I will create a new referral for this patient. So I will fill in a name for this referral.
For anyone that is not familiar with the Salesforce environment, I just want to clarify, referrals come from opportunities. So where it says opportunity name is really the referral object.
Yes, thanks for clarifying that. So this patient is gonna be referred for some physical therapy, and we're currently in the scheduling stage for this referral. We're gonna fill in a close date for the referral. I can also fill in that it's about a new patient. And then an important part here is that this patient actually doesn't exist yet in Salesforce. So I'm gonna create a new account, which reflects a new patient for this person, and make sure that the required information is in here as well.
While you type that, Shul, that was a really important distinction, because that the fact that you could pick between a patient and a provider, right, like different type of accounts, that's key from an enablement perspective that is provided by Salesforce Health Cloud. So again, that's kind of native Health Cloud functionality mapping into our process.
So in the meantime, I've created a patient for this referral. And then the last important part to fill in here is the referring provider. So this referral is going to be sent by the provider listed here, Ryan Davies. And now I'm going to save this referral. What we'll see here is that this referral is now created. And if we hover over this patient's name, we'll see the EHR ID field here, which is currently empty. I'm highlighting that because it will be filled with the OpenEMR ID once we have sent this patient to OpenEMR. And I also want to highlight here the referring provider that actually has an NPI number, which we are using in this use case to communicate or identify the referring provider between Salesforce and OpenEMR. So going back to this referral, we'll see on the bottom here a send to EHR button. And once I click on this button, it will send this newly created patient with the referral to OpenEMR. So I'm just going to click that. And then we'll see that the patient and the referral was successfully created in the EHR through Founda. If I go to the OpenEMR instance here and refresh my patient finder, I will search by the same name. I will see now that Margaret Coleman was created as a patient in here. If I look on the right, I'll see that an external ID was created as well. And if I go into the details of this patient, I will also see that the referring provider is listed here with the same name and the same NPI number. Now, if I go back into Salesforce to this patient, we'll also see that the EHR ID is now filled with the same ID that OpenEMR created. So this way, all new patients with new referrals that are being created in Salesforce are now automatically registered in OpenEMR. So the referrals and patients are always up to date between both services.
Yeah, phenomenal. Can you click on activity quickly? Right next to the details tab. So one of the cool things there is, the automation layer, which says, call patient to schedule an appointment. So that's now Salesforce enablement that we're doing. So the fact that the patient is now created in the EHR, we are actually automatically creating a task in Salesforce after the EHR ID becomes available, because having that EHR ID in Salesforce is an indicator to the care provider, go make your call, go schedule the appointment, right? Because now we've accepted this patient. So again, all seamless without having someone be manually involved. And this all happened, I think it took 7 days because we had to run some meetings, right? But in terms of like the config work and the dev work and whatnot, we leveraged a lot of what was out there. There's a little bit of setup, obviously, in terms of like getting the security mechanism going. It is a healthcare environment, so we obviously can get around the compliance components. But I mean, it's just in terms of ease of use and driving, the point of how this can change the way you deliver care. Hopefully, this made it a lot more tangible for people that heard us talk about, just conceptually before.
Yeah, I mean, I don't do this particular job, obviously, that we're showcasing here, but I do make phone calls, in my job, and there's nothing like, triggering the data. I mean, everybody knows there's salespeople on Earth, so like, it's not like it's a secret. But like, maybe you are, doing some prospecting in LinkedIn or something like that, and you have an automated tool that generates that. But if it goes into your CRM tool and I can just make a phone call, that's amazing. Like, I'm going to go through those manual steps, whether there's an automation tool or not. That's just how I reach out and share with people what I'm doing. But in your case here, and I'm getting somewhere here, for them to be able to just make the phone call is really an automation in itself. And that's what we were referring to earlier on in the call, where now you really, not only do you need to, kind of think differently about how you're solving for problems when you use this combination of technology, you want to map it to that one point where somebody actually does something they're effective at. And making phone calls is something people don't mind doing. In the past, we were doing this outside of the application. Maybe we were doing it on a desk phone or whatever. And now you're still inside Salesforce because we moved the data to a point and then enabled them to make the call in there. So all your data is housed, making Salesforce a more powerful application. We were also kind of just to pull some things back together from the beginning. When you enable applications with the right amount of data, they become even more powerful than you might have imagined. you're not going to use that phone call feature if you got to pay somebody to, click 40 other buttons to make it, prompt you to be able to call from it. So I think that's a perfect example just in and of itself of how automation itself is happening by enabling data flow between an application and the EHR.
Yeah, I'm not sure, Huron, if you wanted to chime in, but I just wanted to say, Shul, phenomenal job. I think the demo looks phenomenal. I think just the ease with which it flows back and forth just really showcases the capability of the system. I just wanted to say another quick use case there is, imagine that you're in your EHR, right? Like the clinical staff is like drawing blood, or they're taking certain measurements, and you need to kick off a certain, care management plan based on those. Just like we had this automatic task created that you showed on the screen, you can imagine like a medical device, for instance, that's measuring certain things, pushing it into the EHR. We can bring that back in, and we can have a threshold using like a Salesforce flow or like a workflow or some sort of a trigger using Apex that we've written. We can say, hey, if if it's a diabetic patient, if the sugar level is above this or below that, call this, right? Or send somebody home. If this is a nursing home, for instance, and somebody's at home or in-home care type of a situation, you can see how easily we can create those thresholds and then kind of kick off our care steps depending on what the need for that patient is.
Absolutely. Like, it's, for me, every time I talk to you, but also every time we talk to other folks, what comes back to me is how reusable the same little bit of data often is. Like, so we're talking, let's say, about home measurements. So you can then take that together with patient demographics and create an entire follow-up flow based on certain risk parameters. It can be configured based on what the provider feels is important, what the clinician, the physician, feels is important. At the same time, that same data can be used to do follow-ups to make sure that, oh, have you had your annual checkup? Have you done this? Like, have people reach out to patients and get them into the healthcare system to do preventative care, really improve the quality on that side. And it's the same connectivity, the same data, but it's tools such as Salesforce, it's, tools such as some of these remote patient monitoring companies that we're working with, that's based on the same data and on the same relatively straightforward interactions, can create so much value for healthcare that I'm just super excited. Every time you're in the conversation, it's, hey, now we can do this, now we can do that, now we can do that. And it's right. Like, with one Lego block, you can do one thing, with two Lego blocks, you can do 10 things, and it's just expanding like that. So it's, I feel that's one of parts of the powers of true interoperability and breaking that part, making that available, really.
Yeah, that's amazing. Getting people to think like that, solutioning like that, the fact that you can, we touched on that as well. It's, really, I think that's why all three of us, wanted to do this and share, that level of just insight into, do think about it differently, do approach this. There are people and there are solutions out there that can enable, these types of ideas. So wanted to, maybe reach out here and see if there's any questions in the audience. There's a few people here. So I don't know if anybody wanted to hop on. I'll give a minute. They also had a couple of questions come through online. So if there's nothing in the crowd, then we'll maybe ask a few questions and then wrap it up. All right.
Yeah, you can put your questions in chat, or you can raise your hand if you would like to speak. We can enable mics, but if not, then you could take the online question.
Not uncommon. We don't feel bad if you don't ask questions. It'd be much better for you and us if we had another 60 minutes, because we could fill it. But yeah, so let's take something from the chat here. Let's see. There was a question. Are you planning to build an app exchange app in Salesforce?
Yeah, actually, so we're we're actually in the middle of doing that right now. So we're now building out a app exchange app to make it even easier, more straightforward to set up these connections around these things that Shehzad and Jules have shown us.
It really is phenomenal, because it's just hasn't been done before. So it is a paradigm shift. I'll say it again.
No, it really feels like it's part of our philosophy, right? Like it's really this part of, well, you call it data movement, Kirk. We're just trying to make this almost like the magical experience that you have when something just works, and that's really where we need to get to, where you ideally somebody with as little knowledge as possible can click a button, and something that's actually really complicated, highly regulated, just works like magic. That's really the point where you want to get to with this kind of technology.
There was also a question you were in around your ability to connect to EHRs. Is it any EHR, or is it just a handful? Do you build to them?
Yeah. So anybody that tells you they connect with every EHR is lying to you. So we don't have. I wish I had everything out of the box already. Obviously, we've built pre-existing connectors into the bigger ones. Let's say the Epics, the Cerners. Well, name your top 5 list. And a set of the, let's say, long tail ones. There's about 900 EHRs in active use in the United States alone. That's not even counting the rest of the globe if you're doing business there. So with those, we work together. If we have a connection already, great. It's easy, click and set up. If there's no connection yet, either we're building it out or we have partners that build it out for you to make sure that it works. It's really this self-service component of it to make it scalable, so that you don't run into limitations with the physicians that you want to serve.
Nice. Oh, so that's probably really great for you then, Shahzad, because then that enables you to build reusable solutions that you can really use then found as the last mile integration, if you will.
Yeah, we'll build our own app exchange on top of the Founda app exchange.
There you go. Yeah. Well, you're just teasing the audience now for a part 2. I'm sure they want to listen to more of this, for sure. I will selflessly plug you, Shahzad, because if it's not coming from you, then it's always real. And I can tell by your reaction, you have no idea where I'm going. But what I wanted to do was ask you, what do you and Accelerate offer as a service, or a business? Who would come and hire you to help them with Salesforce?
Sure. Well, thank you, first of all. I really appreciate the
Nobody ever
opportunity.
does it for me, so I'll do it for you.
Well, the Nirvana moment, and I'm referring back to your post if people haven't seen it. But yes, I mean, it's like I said, I mean, this is our area of expertise. We do Salesforce for healthcare and life science businesses, kind of across the board, all verticals, right? So providers, payers, med device companies, right? Med tech companies and pharmacies. So this is kind of our holy grail, is kind of making Salesforce sticky. So whether it's Sales Cloud, Service Cloud, some of the non-core products like marketing, Pardot, now we do a lot of Tableau work, and there's Slack integration. There's actually something fun that just came out. It's called case swarming, and it has to do with, in our case, in the healthcare space, it has to do with delivering care to a patient by having multiple people and experts kind of huddle together, right, and deliver care without having to leave the system. So it's actually some really cool things that Salesforce is doing within the healthcare space. And where I think Founda comes in is, again, adding that enablement, right? So there are certain tools that you can use within Salesforce. I think for certain segments of the market, it makes sense, but there are several other segments of the market where those tools are not relevant. And so I think that's where this partnership makes a lot of sense for us. But that's kind of the core of what we do, right? It's all health cloud, moving data in, moving data out, kind of making it sticky, delivering, helping customers, basically deliver better provider and patient outcomes.
Awesome. Well, you're a great person and a great friend as well. I really appreciate you doing what you did, our partnership together. It was a lot of fun working on this. I think it's only inspired us to try harder and find more solutions out there where, moving data seamlessly and making applications work effectively, is something we're really after. So you probably can't go wrong giving Accelerate a call. And Jeroen, thank you, and Jules for hopping on too. You guys I know I work for you, but you really have, from the first day that I met you till now, you really put something together here that's going to have an impact on the healthcare market. So
Yes.
thank you for your dedication and what you brought to the table here. I really appreciate you all's time.
All right. Thanks, everybody.
See ya.
Take care.
Bye.